Okay, today we're going to cover Solidworks sketching primitives in the sketch environment. I'm going to go ahead and open a new part. Now in this particular version of Solidworks I do not have templates set up. So we're just going to open a standard Solidworks part, a new one. And we're going to choose the part file option and go ahead and open one up. We're going to sketch on the front plane, so click the front plane and click sketch. I prefer to use ANSI options versus ISO, so we're going to go into options and then we're going to go to document properties, and it's ANSI's already checked. I'm going to check my units just to make sure. And we're going to make sure that round to nearest fraction's not on. And then we're going to go ahead and start our sketch environment. So there's a number of different sketch entities. If you've never used SolidWorks before, there's two different types of line tools. Regular lines that can be used to form shapes, obviously. And then there's what's called a center line. I call it a construction line. Anytime you use the construction line, you can use it for relations, whether it's dimensions or just adding, like if I want to make this horizontal, I can make it horizontal. But it doesn't affect the shape when you go to actually generate a 3D part. So if I hit the S key and exit the sketch and then hit the S key again and do an extrude, you can see that construction geometry is not going to actually generate a shape. SolidWorks is going to ignore it. So we'll go back into the sketch. And I have the normal to button here. If you don't have your system set up that way, the normal to button is under view orientation right here. And it also happens to be Control 8, which I don't use, haven't put that to memory, so don't use it. But so you got two different types of lines. You have a number of different rectangle objects. You've got corner to corner rectangle, and so that obviously is self-explanatory. You draw rectangles corner to corner. And also under the rectangle tool, you've got a center rectangle button, and this one's handy for drawing rectangles with a center point. It automatically generates a rectangle that has the sides constrained at horizontal and vertical. And like I said, if you've never used SolidWorks before, you're going to have to get used to these different types of constraints. These are coincident. Oops. So after that, we've got a 3-point corner rectangle, so that's going to give us a corner, first direction, and then you pull it out and that gives you the second direction. SolidWorks looks like it sets one corner to perpendicular, and then we've got some parallel constraints. And so this thing can be rotated around that center point. If I grab the vertical, it's not, obviously I need to do a little more constraining, but and then lastly, actually there's two more. So 3-point center rectangles, that same rectangle, except you pick the center and then you pick the direction the rectangle is going to be generated, and you can see how that works. And again, two corners at perpendicular and then two faces with parallel. And we'll go ahead and delete that one. And then I don't use this one hardly ever, but Parallelogram. So gives you your first direction and then your second direction. You can pull it around however you want. And those are all constrained parallel sides and then a point, coincident point. And I just happen to have, this happened to automatically infer this horizontal line. That wouldn't be there if I would have pulled it up at an angle. So then the next toolbar we have is slots, straight slot, point to point. You're just going to generate 2 points and then pull out for your size. Now the unique thing about slots is if I do 2 of these, say I do one like this, you'll notice that when I click on any part of the slot and then the other one, I can set these slots equal, and so they'll automatically size themselves the same, even though they're maybe at different angles. They'll make themselves the same size, so that's handy. Center point straight slot, obviously you pick the center point and then one other point, and then you pick out in space for your size. Generates a slot on an angle from a center point. Let's see, we got 3-point arc slot, so that's self-explanatory. You just pick 3 points, beginning point, end point, and then your center point will define the arc, and then pull out and get your slot size, your overall width. And then the last one on that particular drop down button is center point arc slot. So you're going to pick a center point, then you're going to pull out to the size circle you want, and then you're going to generate the actual arc length by 2 more picks, and then your last pull out and pick will generate the width of the arc, or of the slot, excuse me. So next is circles. Very self-explanatory. 2 picks, center point and diameter. And you'll notice when you do that, it will give you a rough number. And if you hold the shift key down, it'll actually jump to round sizes. Not sure that the control key does anything, and neither does the alt key. How about control shift? That freezes it. In fact, that took me out of the screen. That doesn't do anything. So yeah, it looks like just the shift key makes it so that you can jump to round sizes. And then perimeter circles 3 points. 1, 2, 3. That's it for circles. Then we've got arcs. We have a center point arc, which works real similar to the center point slot. You pick your center point and then 2 points to generate the arc. And the first pick also generates the diameter. And then you've got tangent arc, and we'll go ahead and draw a line first to show that one. So you've got a line there, and then we're going to do tangent arc. So we're going to pick a point off of here, and you can see it automatically generates and sets the tangent relation. And you can also, one of the other things I forgot to show with lines is in SolidWorks, if you float back over the end point of the line, it'll generate one of those tangent arcs. Now I haven't figured out how to get it to go back to the line, but it will generate a tangent arc off of that. Let's see, so we'll go back to arcs. Last one is a 3-point arc. Self-explanatory. 1, 2 pick points, and beginning and end, and then your last pick point generates the I guess you could say both the diameter and possibly the size of the arc based on how you're dragging it. And then you've got polygon. So polygon is self-explanatory. You've got for construction or not, number of sides. It's either going to draw a circle inscribed inside of the polygon or circumscribed outside. So inscribed looks like this. It's inside. Circumscribed is going to touch the tips. So it generates the circle outside. You can see the difference there. And let's see here. Spline, you've got 3 different splines, or one's an actual equation driven. One spline you pick your curvature points, and there's a lot of things. These have control with these handles. You can show curvature. You can also right click and show inflection points, minimum radius, display control polygon, so that gives you the ability to pull and get control that way instead of using the control points and the magnitude. You can constrain to these. I don't believe with regular, let me try it before I say anything. Oh, you can, nope. Yeah, so you can't dimension to the control polygons on those. So that's a regular spline. And then there's a style spline, which is new for either 2014 or 2015. And it's a little different. You can actually dimension to the controls. So I could set these two parallel. Actually, that's wrong pick order. Pick order does matter. And so if I wanted these to be parallel and then I wanted to set a distance, you can actually dimension to the control lines as well. I haven't used style splines a lot. I haven't had a reason to. I probably will use them in the future more. They tend to be smoother, but they're less controllable as far as if I want to set this to cross something and be tangent to it. I'm not sure how easy they are to control in that manner. So, but they're supposed to be nicer, supposed to be smoother. And then equation driven, you have to actually write an algebraic equation of some sort or an equation to drive the spline. Have not used it ever, but it's there for your use. And then you have ellipse, partial. Next one is ellipse, partial ellipse, parabola, and conic. Again, ellipse is pretty self-explanatory. If you remember high school math, one direction sets the overall distance in that direction. The other pick sets it in the other direction. And you can dimension to these control points here. And you can also rotate this thing. So if I pick a line and then set that to fixed just so I can rotate this, and I need to trim that out just so I can get it off that point, put it back there. So if I then take this thing and constrain that to this, and then constrain this one to this endpoint, you can see that it actually rotates the ellipse. So you can control those, and I can dimension them. Then you've got a partial ellipse, and that would be this one. So similar set of commands, first direction, second direction, and then arc. And it also sets the first pick point, which I don't love, but that's the way it works. So you're going to go pick number 1 is your center point, pick number 2 is your first direction and the diameter in that direction. Pick number 3 is the second distance, second direction, and where you pick on this ellipse is where it's going to start. So if I want it to start here, that's where it's going to generate from. Partial ellipse. Also on that drop down list is parabola. Try that again. Pick point number 1, pick point number 2, and then it looks like your last 2 pick points is where on the parabola it starts and ends. So start here, end there. And then finally there's a new one they've added called conic. First pick point is going to be your start point. Second pick point is your end point. Third point is basically determines the angle of the curve. And then the last pick point weights it, and it looks like it's called row value, and it weights the line. So you pick that and then you get the conic. Have not used conic yet at all. Let's see. Then we've got sketch fillet and sketch chamfer. I try not to use those very often because I'd rather put my fillets and chamfers in as features and not in the sketch. Sometimes you can't get away with it or away from it. I mean, this right here is for inserting a plane into a 3D sketch. That's not part of the scope of this necessarily. Sketch text would be next. Pretty simple. If you want to do any sort of etching or embossing, you'll need that. One of the things you also need for sketch text is a line to place it on, or an arc, or a spline. So in this case we'll draw a line, and then we'll do sketch text. We'll pick the line and we'll type some text in. If I could actually spell. And one of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to not want to use the document font in some cases. In this case, we're going to bring that text up to 1/2 inch, and obviously I drew the line too big, so we're going to bring that down. And what you'll find with Solidworks is there's a couple of different ways to edit this text. And so you can see you can set the different alignment values. Full justify spreads it out over the whole line, center. And then you've also can flip it vertically, and you can invert it, you can mirror it. You can set the width factor, which would be, here's 150, so that stretches it out. And 100, and then you can, oops, 100. You can also set the spacing between the text, so 150 spreads it out again. Or and then you can use that downstream. And so that's on a line. If instead I draw an arc, then I can go in and edit this text. And instead of picking the line, I can pick the arc. And we'll flip it back around normal. So you can see it's on an arc there. And I believe you can use a spline. And so we'll go back into the editor, and instead of the arc, we'll pick the spline. Oops. Go back into the editor and pick the spline, if I could make the right pick. And so now it's sitting on that spline, and I can make that spline, you know, curve in the middle here. Bring this point up. Sometimes it does funny stuff. So if I bring that back down, I can probably shove it away from that point. There we go. And so it'll follow different paths. I don't know about Polygon. Let's try Polygon real quick. Yep, it'll even go on the polygon, or a set of lines. Huh. So anyways, I don't use that very often because I don't do a whole lot of text on my mechanical components. And then, do not ask again. There's some other things that you can use. Convert entities and intersection curve is when you actually have a solid that you can work with, or a surface. Offset entities is pretty straightforward, so we'll cover that real quick. So let's say you have a line, and you can go to offset entities, and it'll offset it one direction or the other. Set that to 2 inches so you can see it. And it depends on which side you pick. So if I pick over here, it's going to offset that direction. Pick over here, it offsets this direction. If I hit the OK button, it's going to automatically go the direction it's showing. There's also a button for bidirectional. And you can also set the base, which is the line I use to generate the offset, to be construction. And you can cap the ends. 2 different styles of caps. So you get multiple offsets. A lot of times, like they set this driving, sometimes I'll set it equal to this dimension. There's a number of things to do with dimensions, but and so then there's patterning also. So you've got linear pattern and circular pattern. I try not to use those in sketches. Sometimes, like I said, you can't help it. There's particular instances where you have to use them. But most of the time I try to stay away from sketch patterns. And then there's move, copy, rotate, scale, and stretch entities. I hardly ever use those. I've already got a plan in my mind most of the time. There may be particular instances where a person would use these. I just don't use them. And I believe that is it. So we'll go ahead and cover dimensioning in another video. It really is not part of the scope of just learning to sketch. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope it helps one of you new guys. Thanks.